together, if they do not align their interests with those of society as a whole, we will not be able to overcome the great challenges of our time. And this will have an impact for good on your businesses. So act accordingly, act responsibly, think in long term, do not allow yourselves to be dragged along by those radical media outlets and political parties that are obsessed with projecting us as systemic rivals that profit from selling polarization. Do not fall into their trap. Let's cooperate, let's collaborate, let us take advantage of the major challenges I mentioned earlier to build bridges, enhance synergies, and establish new forms of public-private cooperation and collaboration. The government of Spain is your ally. We have learned by our experience that there is a virtuous cycle between growth and redistribution of growth, that the best and the most resilient way of growing is by making sure that the benefits of growth reach the entire population, especially the most vulnerable. Spain is a paradise for those companies that want to prosper through innovation, talent, clean and cheap energy, institutional stability and top-notch infrastructure. For those companies that want to get rich by generating real value and paying their fair share of taxes, we welcome these companies with open arms. So, dear friends, we are at the dawn of a crucial year, a year in which the future of the international order and of liberal societies will be shaped. Our citizens won't fail us, I'm sure. They will be up to the task, as they always are in the crucial moments. But it is important that governments and companies are too. We must work together to build a new prosperity, a new virtuous triangle formed by the private sector, the state and civil society that will allow us to guarantee economic prosperity, enhance well-being and equality, and ensure environmental sustainability for all and all across the world. It won't be easy, but it will be worth the effort. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. As you said, the FDI inflow to Spain is very high, the highest you have seen in the past. Economic growth is higher than the euro average, and also inflation lower. Do you think that some of your colleagues in Europe can learn something from your policies, and what policies do you think they should be inspired by?
Thank you, Borg, for your question. I would say that we are living in a period that we need leaders that transform societies and not administrate societies. And so to keep that stability, political stability, social stability, economic stability within our societies, but also thinking broader at the European level, we need to transform ourselves to earn competitiveness, to understand that climate change, digital transformations are big tools for the good of our societies, and not to use some of the crises that we're facing, such as the war in Ukraine and the energy prices, to slow down or to put aside our commitment regarding the ecological transition of our economies. And that, of course, that idea of transformation means that, for instance, when we touch our experience chairing the European Council during the last semester, and the reform that you mentioned before, the electric reform, this has been a real and very complex debate. And I think, the companies, I think also the Commission and the Parliament, because I think that we reach a very important agreement for the good of our continent and our competitiveness.
Do you, Prime Minister, think that sometimes we lack self-confidence in Europe? In 2012, international actors were saying that the euro was going to be in really deep problems, even challenged as a currency, still the second most important currency in the world. Then it was Greece that was going to go bust, and now, together with Spain, one of the fastest growing economies. You had one of the highest youth unemployments and unemployment rates, and you are now in like a comeback situation. And we were going to also be freezing the whole winter because of making ourselves independent of Russian gas. Is it a little bit, do we have to explain also more the political processes we have in Europe? When there are democratic states that come together, of course there will be discussions. Then it usually ends up with something, but the media is writing so much about the process, so people think that maybe this is a mess, but this is democracy.
This is democracy, and I completely agree with you. I think that the most wonderful experience that I have from this debate around the table of the European Council is to see prime ministers and head of states debating and trying to find a landing zone for the good of our societies. And this is democracy, and democracy needs, it has its timing to move further. And I think that this is what we did, for instance, during the pandemic. During this very important agreement on the next generation funds, and of course our common approach with regard to the conflict in Ukraine. So, this is the instruments that we have, and I think that this is the most important strength that we as Europe have.
But maybe sometimes you think it's
of course
is a little bit tough, and you also
and of course you were telling before in your remarks that of course we have this Spanish presidency. We open the talks of negotiations with Ukraine, Moldova, Western Balkans.
There were some coffee breaks there, weren't there?
And indeed, this enlargement will table the urgency and necessity to reform our institutions, our decision-making process. Passing from a unanimity to a qualified majority. But these are, like instruments, tools. The most important thing is the geopolitical shift that we are going to witness in Europe in the coming years. And I think this is for good, and this will also stabilize, in my opinion, in the short term and medium term, the situation in the eastern part of Europe.
But in your speech, you also strongly underlined the importance of sticking to core values, European values, UN Charter, democracy and all this. And we're seeing currently polarization in the US. There is fundamental polarization, but aren't we seeing the same happening in the EU today? And are you afraid that this polarization will just escalate, or do you see possibilities for some convergence moving forward? You were able to push through, for example, the accession of Ukraine and Moldova. That was not expected, but how do you see that? How is it possible to get more convergence and not end up in disagreeing on everything?
So you have like three dimensions of the debate and three institutions in the European Union framework. The first one is the European Council, and I see, a common sense that we need to move further, even if, it doesn't matter if you belong to a right-wing political family or a left-wing political family. I think that there's a landing zone, a common sense to move further in some issues, such as this internal reform that we need to face in order to be effective in the enlargement process. Then you have the Commission, and for that I believe that after the European elections, what we need is to have an agreement among the major political families, Social Democrats, the Popular Party, and also Liberals. And finally, we have the European Parliament, and for that I think it's crucial. It will be instrumental that our citizens, they strengthen, I would say, the traditional families and not the far right in order to have the best outcome of these elections, and we can have a constructive European Parliament. But I have a positive instinct on what is going to happen in Europe in the coming years. I think that we have learned a lot from the crisis that we suffered over the past 4 or 5 years, the pandemic, but not only the pandemic, also the war in Ukraine. And what we are going to witness is a more federal European Union and a more integrated European Union. I'm really happy to see that, we're opening ourselves to Western Balkans, which is a region that we, are very committed.
You see President Vučić is
He's a good friend.
Carefully.
He's a good friend of Spain and myself. So, happy to see him again here with me, and of course with Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia eventually.
How historic was the agreement on the accession of Ukraine and Moldova?
I think it was.
Negotiations.
I come from a country, thanks to the leadership of Jacques Delors, Spain and Portugal, we entered the European Union back in the 80s of last century. So, we're very happy and very grateful to have been the presidency of the European Council in this very historical moment of the European Union project. So, and I think it was a very important political message, the one that we sent to the Ukrainian society and the Ukrainian government. And let's hope that in the coming months we can end this war and respect the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and we can, build peace in the Middle East and the eastern side of Europe.
And the West Balkans are the next EU members?
Well, that's for sure. We are very, very committed and very vocal. Alexander knows on his accession to the European Union. I think that that will bring us a lot of strength, and we will provide the stability that part of the European Union or Europe needs.
Muchas gracias.
Thanks.
So great to see you here again. And we are now moving from Prime Minister Sanchez and Spain to your friend President Macron of France.
Good friend.
It's a good segue.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.